Elvia.
Hi, how are you? Welcome.
How are you doing? Thank you.
Come on into our Posada exhibit.
So, tell me a little bit about your role as the director at the Fullerton Museum Center. What does it entail?
It entails everything. It entails looking over, supervising, finding curators, guest curators, since we don't have a full-time one anymore, to help put together shows. For this show on Jose Guadalupe Posada, we went with Consuelo G. Flores, who's an artist, filmmaker, and writer from East Los Angeles. She did a wonderful job working with our team and I bringing this show together. So it's supervising staff, it's helping to make sure that we keep our doors open by finding sponsors and grants, writing grants, supervising those grants once we receive them, working in collaboration with our board. We have a wonderful board of trustees and volunteers. We have partnerships with Fullerton College. Several of the students have helped the past 3 exhibits since reopening in late July of putting this show together. So that's been a huge help. And then also working with the city on how we can better be in collaboration and do what's best for the community in the city of Fullerton.
Wow, that's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. And social media and all sorts of other things.
Right. Let me add a little bit more work for you. So can you show us around a little bit at the exhibit? Tell us
Sure. Yeah. So Jose Guadalupe Posada was a Mexican printmaker, and he died over 100 years ago, but his work is still really important and inspires so many generations, not just of Chicano Latinos, the public, like several artists, and you'll see it in the legacy of Jose Guadalupe Posada, the Grateful Dead, and other artists who have been really inspired by him. This is a photo of Posada and his son, and this is the publisher Antonio Vanegas Arroyo, who helped him get his work out there. So a lot of it's all printmaking, and he mostly worked in with black ink. But our show is broken up to all the different parts that he did. And we have a wonderful audio tour that is narrated by Gabriel Romero, who's a voice actor and a wonderful actor. So that QR code is at our front desk when people check in, and they can listen to all the wonderful descriptions about these works. It's a huge show. We have over 50 pieces in our gallery. But again, these are the little chapbooks, libritos. He did religious figures. When we opened the show, or we opened the boxes of the show, we got really emotional because I never thought that we'd be able to see his work in real life. I mean, these are his original plaques, blocks that he carved out. He made over 20,000 of them. And this is all metal, so I can imagine how, like I have arthritis, I can imagine how his hands were. And it's a really neat exhibit for students to see, for the public to see. We've had over 800 students from Fullerton and elsewhere see the show, and this is always an eye grabber.
So let me ask you a personal question too. How long have you been working at FMC?
So I've, as a director, since the end of July, or since the middle of July. But before that, I was the operations coordinator. So I handled anything to do with the building. I ran the beer garden, I ran the gift shop. I handled all the finances for the nonprofit and with the city. And then the pandemic hit, and then the city decided to stop funding the museum. And so unfortunately, I was laid off along with the curator at the time. And so the nonprofit decided to continue on with the museum, and then they brought me on in the middle of July, 2 weeks before we opened our beer garden and our first exhibit, which was Green Book. Yeah. So before then, I worked for the museum for 7 years, so about, not counting the pandemic, about 8 years, 8.5 years.
Wow, so in total about a decade.
Yeah, almost. And I worked beforehand with the city of Fullerton for 18 years. So I've been, even though I didn't grow up here, Fullerton does feel like my second hometown, so I've been here for about 21 years. And I came into Fullerton with the Orange County Human Relations. I was a community leadership specialist, so I would train grassroots organizers in the Richmond area, in the Gilbert and Garnett area, on how to speak up for themselves, to make sure that they're a part of the decisions that the city was making. And then, unfortunately, 9/11 hit, and I was laid off. I have a wonderful story. But the department head at the time, Pat Trotter, invited me to be a consultant, and so I worked with the teen program as a teen director, with the neighborhood centers all around the city, again, continuing to doing the leadership specialist role, but also really working on our teen program.
So you have a great resume, just that,
yeah.
You know, to be this director.
Yeah, I feel like it's all helped. Every position that I've held outside of Fullerton or here as a community organizer has helped me now as a director.
Yeah, so let's take a look into this other room right here.
Sure.
If you could explain for us what's in here.
Yeah, the first step, it's all about Posada. It's all about the rich history, all his work. The famous Caterina, that everyone calls her Caterina, is in that poster over there, but he named her La Pelona because, you know, she's a skull, she's bald. But as you come in, there's a couple of contemporary artists that are here. One of them is Jose Lozano, who's from Fullerton. He's above in the game area. But his art is right in the front of the museum. That was just placed there not too long ago, a few months ago. And he's going to be contributing a mural for our next exhibit, which is called Fullerton Art Town. Okay. But once you walk in through here, it's all about the contemporary artists that we, along with Consuelo Flores and Rigo Maldonado, who is the original curator, and I, bringing all of these artists together. So this artist is from Mexico City, and he created several of these pieces for the museum. And this dress is from Breath of Fire Latina Theater Ensemble, one of their founding members, Gina Davidson, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago, but her dress is still used at Noche de Altares, Day of the Dead events, and also right before the pandemic during the Pacific Symphony performance that Sarah Guerrero wrote. Another favorite of students is Lalo Alcaraz, who just won the Her Block Award and was at the Library of Congress accepting it for these 3 pieces, along with some others in his portfolio. So we're really excited for him. He was here last Saturday. It was a very well-attended event, and we're really grateful and honored to carry his work. And then this beautiful piece, which I love, it is at the center, the heart of our gallery, is of Jose Guadalupe Posada, and it was painted by Jose Antonio Aguirre, who also did the large calaveras in the back.
So let's take a look at the large calaveras in the back.
Right before we get to that, part of our show, we're in collaboration with Self-Help Graphics, who allowed us to use these pieces, and we wanted to focus on Dia de los Muertos because he is such a big influence on Day of the Dead, what we have and celebrate now. So each poster is from a year that they had it. They've had it for over 50 years, but you could see him in one of the posters over here celebrating his anniversary. But we have several wonderful, significant artists like Melanie Cervantes over here. Sonia Romero is going to be at one of our upcoming events for our closing events. We're going to have a panel of hers, along with Ofelia Esparza, Rosana Esparza, and Jackie. Ofelia is well known. She is Chicana Latino royalty. She creates Day of the Dead altars. She just celebrated her 90th birthday, and she will also be here part of the panel for our closing event, our Artist in Focus talk. So we're excited about that. And then Gronk was an artist from the 70s who started a group. They're going to be, I think, making a movie about him, but lots of significant artists work. Again, on this other side, we have Esther Hernandez with Sun Mad Raisins, a really significant piece. We had students here, so we had to cover up some of the pieces. And the Grateful Dead, some of their album covers.
So you mentioned a little bit earlier that Fulton Museum Center went through quite a bit because of it in the pandemic. Could you talk a little bit more about how you guys persisted despite of that?
Yeah, so as museums, we book shows years in advance. This show was booked 6 years ago. So we lost a lot of time and money because they didn't have access to our records, because they didn't have access to the building. But with our board, it has been very active. They've been meeting quite a lot more than a typical board would. They're basically, they've been trying to, they've been working on a relationship with the city of still having them have a presence, having them support us. We went from receiving $600,000 a year in support, and that was part of employees that they would help cover and so forth. And the grant that they gave us, or the money that they gave us for this past year was $100,000. So we went from having a staff of like 6 to 7 full-time, 13 part-time. We're running almost the same amount of programming with 1 full-time staff and 5 part-time staff.
Wow, that is a massive increase.
It's a massive increase, but I'm pretty proud of ourselves that we're being able to do a lot with very little. We have received some grants and some really great donations. We weren't going to bring back our membership until April, but people kept asking for it. Our community has been very supportive, but we want to see how can we sustain this? How can we increase our staff? How can we, if we can do all of this with just a little bit of money and staff, what else can we do with more money and more staff? And it's all about the community and the city that we serve.
So we just looked at the Guadalupe exhibition here, and this I believe is the Leo Fender exhibition. So could you show us around here a little bit more?
Sure. So this has been up. Usually our Leo Fender, our exhibits are up for 2 to 3 years. Again, because of the pandemic, we've extended it. We are going to bring in a new exhibit for December 2023. It's a 30th anniversary of our first exhibit on Fender, so we're really excited about that. More details to come, but someone who used to be a part of the museum, Rich History, will be helping us with that. But this exhibit I love because we get a lot of people when they're visiting the museum, and they know about our Fender exhibit. They mention how their mom or their dad or their cousin or they worked at the Leo Fender factory. So this show is dedicated to the workers, to this, to the people who work behind the scenes of the famous guitar. So we have multiple videos, interviews that we put that are put together of people who have worked for decades, at the Fender exhibit. And there's a long list. We have 4 different tablets, and you could choose from researching this history. And then little pictures and mementos. Kelly Chittister was the one that put this show together for us a few years ago, who was the curator at the museum. She's now the executive director at the museum.
Wow.
Yeah, so the 2 people who were laid off are now executive directors at museums. So that worked out for us. Again, more mementos, and then all these guitars are on loan from different people, just kind of highlighting the type of work, the Fender banjo, the Wildwood one, the Cardonado, and this was courtesy of Arliss McMinn. But we have a really great, it never fails that once we're in de-install or installing, because we close this show, that the Fender fans and Fender people still want to come in. So we do whatever we can to open up our gallery. It's a small exhibit, but a very powerful one. So we're excited about the new show. Mm-hmm.
Right, so what kind of work do you do, like artistic work do you do personally?
What kind of artistic work do I do personally? Okay. So aside from this, I'm also a writer, director, and a producer and filmmaker. I I'm a poet and playwright, so I'm also a teaching artist. So aside from this, I teach creative writing classes. I have a group called Rio de mi Vida and Casa Artista, and it's teaching anyone at all levels how to write their personal stories, and it's cut up into 4 pieces where they write about their past, present, future, and we incorporated a new section called Roots. So they go into like their ancestors and their elders' stories. It's very powerful. I've worked with, hundreds of students. I teach that with my creative partners, Angela Estela and Guido Mendoza. I'm also a playwright. I've worked with Chicanas, Cholas and Chisme, East LA at Casa 0101 Theater, with Teatro Frida Kahlo. I've written over a dozen plays, but my playwriting started, although I was a board member of Breath of Fire Latina Theater Ensemble a decade ago. I didn't really start writing plays until I went to Fullerton College and took a class. I took a year of creative writing and Chicano Latino classes just for fun, like 7 years ago. And Bill Mittler taught the class, and I just fell in love. So my first play, Sala de Moriguera, was written there.
And where can people find you if they want to take on your classes? Sure,
I'm at elviasusana.com. I've moved away from playwriting and producing plays, and I'm doing filmmaking. My first film, Manitas, has won several awards. It was part of like 12 festivals. I'll be filming my next short film in El Paso, Texas, where my family's from, this June. So I keep myself pretty busy. This Saturday, I'll be teaching a creative writing class in Anaheim for a nonprofit. So aside from here, when I'm not here, I'm out there because it balances me. This is my work, and it keeps my artistic soul fed. But I'm also, first and foremost, a poet and a writer as well.
So you try to balance out.
I try to balance it out. It balances me out.
Yeah, that's very healthy. So we can now maybe look at some of the other places here.
Sure. So the students love this section too because the group's name, or the artist, his artist's name is Chingaderas. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like a Spanish bad word. Right. So they're like, what are they called again? What are they called again? But I love his work. So this is an artist that I discovered in El Paso on one of my writing retreats, and I really loved his use of color, but also what he says is that they're like alebrijes, which if you saw the movie Coco, they're like the Pepita, the magical creatures that can go in and out of the world. And so he made this one special for the museum. Some of these pieces, along with the wood carvings, will be silent auctioned off at our closing event. And then these photos are from El Paso by his wife and partner, again, showing how these spirits can move in and out of our world. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then we have a clip of a documentary on Posada here, and then also an animation. And it's about 4 or 5 minutes long, so there's a little bit of everything for people who come down. This is one of the most popular shows that we've ever had at the museum. And so we're really grateful for the Posada Foundation and the Lucas Museum for lending us this exhibit. Mm-hmm. What I'm trying to do is, what can we do with the small staff that we have that can pack a punch, you know? Mm-hmm. We do an opening, but this has been such a significant show and such a community show that I want to start doing closing events where we can invite the community out, where people can enjoy the artwork one more time. We're going to have a band out on Wilshire. We're closing down Wilshire, so it's kind of like a block party, right, you know, at the museum, in front of the museum. I love the plaza, but I also want to experiment of doing events just right here, right in front of our beautiful historic building. We're going to have different vendors and artists come out. We'll have our beer garden, of course, but most importantly, we just really want to celebrate the artists, all the artists, but really pack a punch with the closing of this wonderful show.
Mm-hmm. And this is on May 14th, right?
May 14th, Saturday, from 12 to 4 p.m. 12 to 4. And then your last chance to see it is Sunday, May 15th. And then right after we close at 4 p.m., our staff is going to start to de-install because we have 3 weeks for our next show, which is Fullerton Art Town, which we're really excited about. That's another community, everyone's involved show. We have a call out to artists. We've received 54 submissions already. There's still like 4 or 5 days to submit. So we're really excited about that show.
Right, so thank you so much for explaining all the exhibitions for us.